to protect our seniors throughout this crisis. And with that, I'm happy to take questions from members of the media.
That was Governor Pritzker. You know, it has become more and more apparent that nursing homes are hotspots. They are places where this virus can find a great population of people that oftentimes have underlying health conditions. You know, even if you're young and you're in a long-term care facility, that usually means you've had an injury or a surgery that you're recovering from. You're somewhat incapacitated to the point where your family can't help you and you need more care. They are not just old people, but we're talking vulnerable people as well, of all demographics. And you've got a vulnerable population in close proximity. And, you know, when a virus takes hold in a place like that, it can spread like wildfire. So bravo. The governor has been doing more and more in recent weeks to try to focus our COVID response on nursing homes and what is happening there and getting those outbreaks under control. It will go a long way toward bringing down our infection rate and bringing down our death rate. And, you know, it's not like the people in those facilities exist in a vacuum. There are staff at all those places, staff that come and go to their own homes. That's the same problem that's in meatpacking plants. You know, the COVID-19 may start there, it may spread there, it may take root there, but those people don't live in those meatpacking plants 24/7. They go home to their families. They go to the grocery store. They go out in their communities. And whenever you see a hot spot, be it a nursing home or a meatpacking plant, you can just sit back and watch the numbers, watch the waves as the infection spreads out further and further from that central point as people go out to their places of business, they go to the grocery store, they go to see their families. I've been talking about a lot of health professionals writing of recent days. This virus is going to be with us, as near as we can tell right now, it's going to be with us forever. One doctor speculated that it's going to be like measles or mumps or chickenpox. It's just going to be part of the fabric of our lives. But we still don't have a treatment. We still don't have a vaccine. And we have a very contagious virus on our hands that we're going to be living with for the longest, well, I was going to say the longest time, but let's cross our fingers and hope that's not the case. But we are probably never going to be able to eliminate our risk. There's risk everywhere. But the public health professionals I've been reading recently say the only way to approach this is, first of all, go after the hot spots, just like what the governor said. Go after the nursing homes. Make sure they know that they have a testing program in place that is going to keep these virus hotspots from spreading. And the rest of us have to do a risk assessment. We're not going to live the rest of our lives locked in our homes, but we have to be smart and we have to figure out what we're comfortable with. As one public health professional said, look, you can't eliminate the risk, but you can minimize it. If you are desperate to get to a hair salon, then maybe what you give up is eating at a restaurant until there's a vaccine and there's enough immunity. Think in terms of choices. If she gave the example, if grandparents want to see their grandkids and both families have been isolating, it's probably safe. But if one person in one of those households has not been isolating, if they have been going out on a regular basis and interacting with other people, then it's not safe for those two families to get together. You've got to be smart. And this is going to be especially important as we start to open back up and some people start going back to work. What does that mean for your whole family? I mean, if you send your kid over to a neighbor's house to have a play date, when your child comes home, anybody in that household who had the virus, asymptomatic or not, is a potential vector coming to your house. You just got to think about this. You got to think in terms of not living the rest of your life in terror, but you got to think in terms of living the rest of your life smart. What risks are you willing to take, and which risks are you not willing to take? I mean, when you get in your car, you fasten your seatbelt, right? Not because it's risk-free to drive, but you just want to minimize your risks. We may have to start thinking about COVID-19 this way as the state opens up tomorrow and the city of Chicago starts to open up next week. We have seen all kinds of coronavirus fallout as far as lawsuits and companies not protecting their employees, employees walking out, filing suits. We've asked our good friend, our resident lawyer, Lou Cairo from GWC Injury Lawyers, to join us and talk about that and explain some of what's going on from a legal standpoint. He'll be here right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
I reported a story in the last week or so about how governors of states that were not taking precautions, that were not issuing stay-at-home orders, that were not asking their businesses to close, the National Trial Lawyers Association issued a statement and said, whether whether there's federal guidelines or not, if you decide during this pandemic to keep your business open, we are not saying that we are not at some point going to be representing somebody who gets sick at your place, whether it's a worker, whether it's a customer. So, you want to stay open, great, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to get sued. Well, as it turns out, there have been COVID lawsuits being filed. And businesses have to make really tough decisions, even as the states and cities start to reopen. How do you open up? How do you keep your workers safe? How do you keep your customers safe? Bottom line, how do you avoid legal liability? And there have been some lawsuits that I want to talk to our resident legal expert, Lou Cairo, about. He joins us now. Hey, Lou, how are you?
Very well, Joan. How you doing?
Good. Have you had any Zoom chats with your grandkids?
Actually, I've been very fortunate. My wife and I have been super safe, really not going anywhere other than I go to the grocery store and at Home Depot when I need to, and I've got gloves and a mask on, and my kids are doing the same thing. So we've actually been able to have the kids and the grandkids over at the house to enjoy them without hugs and kisses. And when you're Italian, that's hard to do, but physical exposure to the kids.
And that's exactly what I've been reading about public health professionals recommending. As things start to open up, we who are concerned about this virus there will never be a way to be 100% safe. So you have to think about it, what your risks are. What risks are you willing to undertake? So, that kind of in-person meeting between two families that have been really smart, that's exactly how I think we are going to start opening up this country again. But on to this other topic of litigation. Lou, I specifically want to talk to you about this lawsuit, this class action lawsuit that was filed against McDonald's. I believe it was filed, the 19th of this month, accusing McDonald's of not adopting government safety guidelines to protect the workers during the outbreak. What can you tell me about it?
Well, honestly, I read a brief little paragraph about it. I don't know a heck of a lot, but I will say I'm just going to give my own really honest personal opinion. I think that in some instances when we are faced with calamities like we're faced right now, people become, in my business, sometimes become opportunistic and they're trying to find a way to make a living. Like, let's go after every nursing home around because old people are dying. 50% of the people with COVID-19 death-related statistics are in nursing homes. So let's go after nursing homes. Let's blame them. McDonald's is a big corporation. Let's find a way to file a lawsuit against McDonald's. They're saying that McDonald's isn't passing out enough hand sanitizers for people, which in which case, by the way, don't go in. I mean, if you walk in there and you don't see a hand sanitizer and that's what you want, then you shouldn't walk in the front door. further. And
Well, from what Harris sent me some details of the lawsuit, and he said to me that it specifically alleges that McDonald's hasn't provided sufficient amounts of sanitizer, masks, gloves, that the company failed to contact staff when an employee tested positive. And also, they want an injunction that would compel McDonald's to stop making employees reuse masks and would require customers to wear face coverings and to be that McDonald's be required to inform workers when another staffer contracts COVID-19. That's kind of, that's not all of it, but that's some of it.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. This is just I'm a tort lawyer, personal injury. Every possible way that you could sue somebody, I should embrace it and try to find a way to do it myself. But moralistically, I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, well, every state has their own requirements for whether you have to wear a mask, whether you should be socially distancing yourself from other people. So if the state doesn't have a requirement, why would it be incumbent upon McDonald's to have a rule that is more stringent than what the governor of that state and certainly the president of the United States of America has required for people in that industry or in that state? And, I would say, this isn't a hospital, but if people are wearing face masks because they're supposed to wear face masks, they should give them clean face masks rather than having them reuse them. If they can prove that using a used face mask is infecting food and causing people to get sick, that would be an issue. As far as notifying workers that one of your coworkers, Joe Smith, just was diagnosed with COVID-19, there are HIPAA laws that would forbid an employer from doing that. You can't tell them who was positive, but what you can do is something Governor Pritzker talks about daily, is trying to find ways to enhance the social tracing. So if somebody on the food line was diagnosed with COVID-19, McDonald's and any employer should say, we had one of our people, I can't tell you who it was, that tested positive, and you guys all work together, so I think you should all quarantine for 14 days, and you should get tested and come back when you have a negative test in 14 days. That's, I think, what any responsible employer should do. But I'm not sure if McDonald's is doing that at all, or they're just totally ignoring it. I apologize, I don't have that information. But I know it's an accusation in the lawsuit, and it is unfortunate. But they picked one of the largest fast food enterprises in the nation because it's a deep pocket. It's a good target.
Well, Lou, looking to the broader issue, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Association, they're usually the organization that workers look to for protections on the job. We've seen, setting aside this situation with McDonald's, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of people at meatpacking plants become infected, and there have been a number of deaths. Do you find it curious that there has not been one OSHA action taken on behalf of workers anywhere across the country to date based on putting workers at risk or not keeping them safe from COVID-19?
Yeah. What I'll say in that regard, Joan, is because I've worked in a personal injury practice for 37 years, and we do construction negligence more than any firm, so I deal with OSHA all the time. I'm not surprised based upon past practice. Am I disappointed? Absolutely. OSHA is a federal agency that gets federal funding, and in the Chicagoland area, there's a couple offices. They are supposed to investigate every fatality, every instance where I think in excess of 10 employees may be exposed to some type of hazardous condition. And they have, a half a dozen compliance officers running around the state trying to do this, and it's absolutely impossible. It is such a toothless tiger, not because they don't have the right intent, but they don't have the manpower, they don't have the resources. And I've seen egregious cases where people have been killed in construction sites, and OSHA will whack an employer with a fine of $75,000, and they get settled for $5,000. It's a shame. So am I surprised that OSHA's not out there doing investigations in some of these meatpacking plants and chicken farms and factories And we're even in nursing homes where you could have 50 CNAs working and everybody's getting sick, as well as the people that are residing there. Yeah, I'm shocked that they don't do that. It's disappointing. But given their resources, I understand why they're not doing it, and they just need to allocate more capital to this enforcement. It's like saying, well, we've got a great policy for our police department, but we've only got 12 cops in the city of Chicago. We're doing the best we can. That ain't a good excuse. But the reality is, and I guess I'm not surprised why they're not getting to the scene of the crime. They don't have enough police officers, and compliance officers are like police officers for worker safety. And in the scheme of things, in our capitalistic society, businesses prevail at the expense of safety for the little guy. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And OSHA is although they have some great people working there, but in the scheme of things, it's a toothless tiger trying to enforce safety on a job site. When you can have somebody killed for gross safety violations and only pay a $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000 fine in the end, that's cheap. That's just cheap. It's a lot cheaper than enforcing real safety.
Well, yeah, because a lot of times, the way you get a company to behave in a more responsible manner is making it too expensive for them not to behave in a more responsible manner. You said you weren't surprised that you see OSHA as a toothless tiger. Lou, has it always been like that, or is this something new?
No, I honestly, my whole career, and again, when you say it has a bad connotation when you repeat what I said, and I said a toothless tiger. And I don't mean it in the way that there are a bunch of lackeys that aren't doing their job. I just mean, you look at all the construction, there could be 50 tower cranes in Chicago. That's 50 high rises going up. And you're talking thousands of workers and, scattered over, a multi-mile area. And you have a half a dozen OSHA officers to do the whole northern half of Illinois. How do they possibly get to all these job sites? So when do they respond? They respond when they have to, when there's a death, meaning someone has already died. And then they do their investigation, and they give it to the hearing officers. And then the hearing officers, they have all these files there. They're just cutting deals. I've never seen where somebody got like a $50,000 penalty and paid like $40,000. They're always paying 10 cents on the dollar. They get negotiated down to nothing. Not that, well, we didn't violate the law. We didn't have a training program. We didn't enforce training. We knew what they were doing, and we looked the other way. We'll never do it again. Okay, you promise you'll never do it again? Okay, you'll pay 10%. The unions can only do so much with training. And if you had a union official on every job site standing there watching, they would make sure that their people work safe. And when they saw other trades working unsafe, they would pull their guys right off the job. But in the same respect, you have 15 union officials, some locals, 5 union officials. And every job in the city has an iron worker, IBW member, sheet metal worker, laborer, carpenter, plumber. How can you can't have union officials on every single job site verifying that it's safe for their men. They do the best that they can with jobs all over the state of Illinois. So you can't depend on the union to do it. And the only one that has true policing powers is OSHA. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate, but most of my career, this is something that I've always been disappointed in, because I think this is the ultimate. This is somebody who doesn't need a warrant to come onto your property. They walk on any job site they want, and they say, stop everything, show me your safety program, tell me who's been trained, tell me who hasn't been trained, show me the toolbox safety talks, show me where you have your organization meetings, your orientation for the job. And when you don't have these things, these are check marks, these are all traffic tickets that you're getting on the job site. And, then the only question is, okay, how do you enforce it? What do you do with it? And it makes an owner very nervous when he gets all those tickets for doing all those things. And then at the end, they're laughing over beers at the bar with their lawyer. How, man, you cut me a good deal. To pay 10 cents on the dollar, that was a gimme. And that's unfortunate. And again, it's not a criticism of OSHA as much as it is of the federal government. It does not allocate sufficient funds to have enough OSHA officers to be out there really doing their job.
Thank you, Lou. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to be back in just a couple of minutes with Lou Cairo, our good friend from GWC Injury Lawyers. When we come back, there's a new workers' compensation bill. It's supposed to help essential workers with the whole COVID-19 situation. I'm going to talk to Lou about that, find a little bit more about that when we come right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are talking to our good friend Lou Cairo of GWC Injury Lawyers. And you know that last week the legislature met down in Springfield, Illinois, and a bill was passed to lower the burden of proof required of essential employees who contract COVID-19, supposedly trying to make it easier for them to receive workers' compensation benefits. This was, by the way, the first bill from that special session to go to Governor Pritzker's desk, and it makes Illinois the first state in the country to change its workers' comp law to presume that employees contracted COVID-19 on the job if they work at businesses that are deemed essential, like healthcare or banks or grocery stores. What do you think of this new law, Lou?
Well, I think this is one of the ways that Governor Pritzker has been trying to put people before profits. There's a big controversy with the state chambers of commerce and the manufacturers associations and construction contractors associations. What you have to understand is anybody, as we know, anybody can get COVID-19, right? I mean, you could be walking to go to the mailbox and you could get it because a neighbor happened to walk by and had aerosolized COVID bacteria in the air. So it's very difficult to prove how you get COVID-19. Businesses want to reopen. There's essential businesses, like you said, bankers, first responders, grocery stores, hardware stores, and the like. Construction, every different construction trade in Illinois is deemed essential because that's what keeps the world moving in Illinois is our union contractors. So these people are they're fortunate because they're not in line for the people that are claiming unemployment. But on the other hand, these people are exposed every single day to getting COVID-19 because while you and I are sitting at home and we are quarantining and we are being safe, these people are actually going to work. I mean, they're walking out to get to their car. They're taking public transportation downtown. They're on the job site with a bunch of co-employees, and they're really exposed. Now, when they get sick, how do they prove that they got COVID-19 because they were standing on a job site downtown Chicago with 5 other guys on a scaffold, and they were slapping mud on masonry block, building a wall for a high riser. They were on a steel beam doing their welding, etc. How do they prove that? It's almost impossible in some instances to prove that unless you're a doctor or you're a police officer, or you're in close contact with a known victim or someone who has COVID-19. So on the 20th of March, Governor Pritzker passed an executive order that said if you're an essential worker, police officers, doctors, medical technicians, paramedics, or the myriad of different employments that are deemed essential, then the law will presume that if you got COVID-19, the law will presume that you had contracted it on the job, and it's a rebuttable presumption. It's not a guarantee, but it's a rebuttable presumption that that's where you got it. And business interests went crazy. Like, oh my God, now we're going to have people work with comp claims. We're struggling to make a living. Now we got to pay for workers' comp claims. I mean, let them get their union insurance to cover it. Let them get public aid. Why should we pay for it? Well, there was a lawsuit filed down in Sangamon County, and a judge entered a temporary restraining order. And the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission just said, we don't want to be involved in this litigation. We are going to withdraw the application of this executive order to the workers' comp cases. And so the legislature said, okay, well, we're not going to have an executive order. Then we're just going to create a law. And the Senate passed it 50-4. The House passed it 113-2. So you can see the overwhelming support on both sides of the aisle. Collectively, you're talking 163-6 that they passed this. And what this law does is it says it's not quite as broad as what Governor Pritzker had, but it says if you're working in a company that has more than 15 here. If you're a doctor, if you're a medical technician, if you're a paramedic, it's a rebuttable presumption, even for correction officers. If you are in these other essential businesses like construction workers, grocery workers, et cetera, and you are working for an employer that has that you have to either interact with the public or you're working with more than 15 people at your place of employment, and you get COVID-19 with a positive COVID-19 test, then the law will presume that you got it on the job. So are you automatically entitled to COVID-19, to workers' comp benefits? No, because an employer can still rebut that presumption. They can come in and say, hey, that guy was home quarantining for 14 days. He hadn't even been at work with us. And then he got it on the 15th day before he came back to work. Well, then you didn't get it on the job. You got it at home. Or they can say, we've complied with every single requirement for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Illinois Department of Public Health guidelines. We provided all the personal protection. We required social distancing and the like. We've done everything we're supposed to. That may be enough. I'm not sure if it is, but it may be enough for an arbitrator at the Industrial Commission to say, okay, that rebuts the presumption. But the moral of the story is, again, we're taking people over profits here. It's a law in Illinois, the first state in the country that has said we're going to put people before profits, and someone's got to pay for these people's medical bills. Someone's got to pay while they're off work for their compensation. Someone's got to make sure that they're taken care of. It's either going to be the state of Illinois in public aid, or it's going to be private insurance companies, or it's going to be union health and welfare funds, or it could be the employers that have exposed these people to coronavirus, the potential for contracting it, because they're putting them out there in the world saying, hey, we want to make money. We want to do well in our business. So we're going to expose our workforce to get out there and do their work, and they're going to do what they can. If they get sick, I guess we're going to have to pay for it, because they're getting exposed to this to this COVID-19 to help us make money in our business, and that's part of being an employer. You got to take a little bit of the risk with the ability to get all of the benefit. So that's why this passed, and it's a great law to have for working
This situation is clearly unprecedented, and the legal aspects are clearly going to continue to evolve. So I hope, Lou, that you'll come back on in a couple of weeks and we can find out where things stand at that moment in time. Would that be all right?
I'd love to.
Great. And until then, stay safe, my friend, and thank you for helping us out here, okay?
My pleasure, and thanks. Always wonderful to talk to you. Keep doing a good job and keep spreading the love.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. Lou Cairo, GWC Injury Lawyers. They also sponsor our text line, and you can get more information about Lou and what he does at justicestartstoday.com. We are going to take a real quick break, and we're going to be back with more after this.
Local and progressive on